Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for spending some time to learn more about the momentum year. And in this talk, what I want to do is to talk about the momentum year, but from a different viewpoint. Really, this was a fundamental question we asked here at the system office, and one that we will increasingly be asking across other settings too. But the question here was, well, so if the momentum year is important when it comes to when it comes to the way in which we construct degree pathways and even the way in which we place students, enable students to find their pathway, what then does that momentum year approach have to tell us about this transition from not being in college to being in college? What would really a momentum approach be to new student orientation? And so what it is that I wanted to spend the next few minutes talking about is at least understanding then the aspects of the momentum year and how they then pertain to exactly this part of the pathway approach, even the transition for, if you like, taking the first steps into the pathway. So let's remind ourselves of the steps of the momentum year at all. That the momentum year works like this, that each student, when they come to campus, we now arrange an experience where those students, right from the very start, make a purposeful choice of their program, that across all of our institutions, the concept of being undecided will simply be eliminated. Of course, it will be the case, and we know it to be the case, that many students will still come to campus and not have every detail pinned down, and there's no reason why they should. But to arrange through a structure of academic focus areas and also particular programs, a deliberate and purposeful choice, not just checking a box, of which program, which direction will you begin to study. Creating a productive academic mindset, recognizing that we are about educating the whole student, both inside and outside the classroom. And so recognizing that the way in which the institution interacts with each of the learners on their campus is in and of itself a crucial aspect of student success. The way in which the students create their schedule, how important it is that the numbers of courses that they take have as full a schedule as possible to follow as clear a pathway as possible. That we don't want students just simply taking classes and just somehow wandering through their curriculum, but we also want it to be the case that students are taking a critical mass of courses as they follow their degree trajectory through their studies. And that clear pathway is designed when it comes to student success in mind, that they were using the right design principles for the construction of that pathway, and those design principles contain then making sure that every student right from the beginning gets a feeling that they're studying what they thought they chose, that from a curricular standpoint, they're taking at least 9 hours of material that's connected to their particular academic focus area. And then lastly, that every student has the opportunity to pass and successfully complete the freshman math class and English class that that pertain to their discipline. So those are the aspects of the momentum year. So what then does that have to tell us about new student orientation? Well, the first thing that I think it tells us is that we need a difference of terminology. That the new student orientation has traditionally really been about having a sort of a time horizon of maybe the first week or so of classes. Really the idea, the traditional approach to new student orientation is designed to take students from perhaps somewhere in the middle of the summer and get them through, let's be generous and say, the first couple of weeks of college. And more than that, in many ways, new student orientation is constructed in such a way that it is more about us giving students information than them taking it in. So the first thing is to realize that if the momentum year is the way in which we're beginning to think about things, it's a paradigm shift across our system, then the scope of new student orientation has to change. And instead, for us to think about not new student orientation as a way to make it through the first couple of weeks of college, but instead to change the terminology, instead to talk about the transition from not college to college. And for this experience to be instead a transition that goes all of the way from not being in college, the moment of application, the moment of seeking to come to your institution, really all the way through till the student returns to the beginning of their second year in college. So an engagement in not only over the first couple of weeks, but actually a deliberate engagement all the way through that first student academic year, all the way through that summer, all the way through to the beginning of the next academic year. And one might reasonably say, well, why stop there? And actually, if you're up for the challenge, then I think we are too. But at least to think about the momentum year as a focus on building a strong foundation for that first academic year, the scope of the transition is not a matter of weeks, but the full academic year. So then, how should that be arranged? How would we think then about what it is that we would do in this orientation? As I've already alluded, I think it really is the pattern of a traditional new student orientation, that really this is about us somehow giving students information in a way that is convenient to us. This is about taking the information that we think that we need to have delivered and to deliver it in such a way that later on when a student says, well, what about this? That we can say, well, we told you at orientation. You don't remember? Instead, again, thinking through the way in which the momentum approach would unfold, instead, we want to think about this new student transition as being orchestrated guidance. Think about the fact that we are taking these students and guiding them through the journey of their first year, and that journey will entail all kinds of advice and experiences. But all of that needs to be deliberately arranged and deliberately orchestrated. Think about all of the different aspects of student life on campus, the registrar's office, the bursar's office, their new advisor, their academic program, where it is that they might live, residence life, all of those different aspects. We cannot leave to chance the way in which those different offices interact and move in and out of the student experience. Instead, we need to deliberately orchestrate that experience in just the same way as we might orchestrate a grand piece of music for an orchestra, that it is extraordinarily important that at one moment perhaps one office needs to come to the fore and another take a back seat, but then at another aspect, another office comes to the fore, and overall there is a uniform and organized structure to all of those interactions. So an orchestrated guidance. At its heart, really, this is a place for us to realize that the momentum year is unabashedly a way in which the student affairs side of the house and the academics affairs side of the house should realize that there is only one house and they're both part of it. And that they're really this way of talking where we have these different aspects, these different parts of the house, really is our construction, not a way in which it should be done. So then let's think about then the way in which this orchestrated guidance would unfold. The first aspect of the momentum year approach asks for the students to make that purposeful choice. So what we want to do is just for a few moments to sort of to disassemble what might be part of that purposeful choice. And we believe that there are at least three aspects of this purposeful choice. The first is that it's sort of an obvious tautology that one can simply not choose what one doesn't know about. And of course it's the case that for many, many students, the way in which they go about choosing their degree program or their subject area or their course of study is that they are much more likely to choose those different disciplines which they are much more familiar with. There is a working hypothesis that the way in which students go about choosing their degree program is really based on cognitive ease and compelling narrative. That, of course, it's the case that being more familiar with a particular degree program, having heard of it at all, but certainly being more familiar, makes it much more likely that students will be attracted towards that particular discipline. And more than that, if there's a good story, if there's a good reason why you could explain that absolutely, this is why I need to be a nurse, because, my sister was extraordinarily sick when we were young, and there was a nurse who really helped her, and I want to do that too. I want to somehow give back in just the same way that nurse did, or other kinds of compelling stories. Those knit together to make an extraordinarily strong reason why students choose the things that they do. The thing is that often students are choosing then from a very small set of the possibilities that are open to them. So how important it is to make sure that for all of our students we can really enable them to see the full spectrum of the different kinds of possibilities that are available on all of our campuses, so they can make an informed choice of where it is that they might go. That then leads to the next aspect. How important it is that as they make that decision, as they are led towards a particular set of disciplines, how important it is to discern whether that particular choice is really a wise choice for them. I think on every campus, I'll pick on nursing as an example of this, it is an unusual campus that has a shortage of people who aspire to be nurses. And yet what we know is that many of those students who aspire to be nurses really are extraordinarily unlikely to ever be able to win a place in a highly selective nursing program. That doesn't mean that they don't really very much want to be a nurse, and it doesn't mean that they don't have a perfectly viable place in some healthcare-related discipline. It just means that just because you want to be a nurse doesn't necessarily mean that you can be a nurse. And that's true in many, many disciplines. That I just remember, I think, I was still at Ole Miss when CSI first came out, and we were suddenly flooded with lots and lots of students who all wanted to be forensic chemists, and yet somehow organic chemistry didn't get any easier just because they all wanted to be forensic chemists. So, discernment. Ways in which we can help students to be able to take that initial informed choice and to discern whether that option really is an option which is a realistic possibility for them. Now, I couch this with caution. I don't want us to imagine that then we are making a self-fulfilling prophecy, that somehow we are then in the position of saying, well, people like you, I don't know. Instead, we need to approach this discernment again with the approach of information, to enable students really to see that, what we know is in the past, students have been able to win a place into this nursing program are students who have been able to make straight A's in science at high school and end up, when they apply to the nursing program, with a GPA of 3.9 or above. Is that you? If that's you, well, then it seems as though nursing is something for you to pursue. If it's not you and you passionately want this and we can partner for that to be you, well, then again, you know that this is the choice that you're making. But it's a choice that you're making with full information, and we enable students to discern for themselves whether that choice that they're making really is a realistic choice for them. And then finally, to affirm the choice that they're making, to say, this is the direction you're going in. We've thought hard about whether or not this really is a good choice and how that might influence the studies that you have. Now we've made a plan. Now it's time to put it into place. And then lastly, to think about the fact that, students, as they're making this purposeful choice, they're making a choice to take the first steps towards a journey that leads throughout potentially the rest of their lives. And to talk with students about the choice of their program with that in mind, that they're not simply making a choice to pursue a particular degree, they're actually making a choice to pursue a particular kind of lifestyle and viewpoint which extends past their graduation and well into their lives. And so, again, we need to enable students to see what it is that the degree that they're potentially going to earn will lead them to when they go out for the career that they will begin. So that's purposeful choice. What then about the sort of the nuts and bolts of making their schedule and becoming a student, right? So I think what we all know is that there are many steps between being a student who applies to an institution and being a student who is enrolled on campus taking classes. And so again, as we think about that transition, how important it is to what I'm saying here to take care of business, to make sure that we recognize all of those extraordinarily important details and recognize that we are in a position to arrange that experience in a way that enables students to be able to navigate through that potentially very complicated set of business decisions. I can't help but mention how important it is to think about. We should not be surprised when we have a large set of students who are, for instance, chosen randomly for verification. I think lots and lots of times when I've talked to people on campus, they've treated verification as if it sort of caught them by surprise. Oh, this year we had people who were chosen for verification. How amazing. No, of course it's not amazing. It's absolutely part and parcel of life on our campuses. And so we should arrange the way in which we deal with the application and enrollment process for our students to take into account the fact that there will be students who will be chosen for verification. And when they get chosen for verification, this should not be a death knell to their application. It should not be a situation where, because they happen to be the ones who are randomly chosen to provide more documents, that now suddenly it's essentially impossible for them to ever find those documents or be able to satisfy the demands of that verification. So it really is about making sure that all of those processes through financial aid and admissions and the registrar's office are all a well-oiled machine. Simply, it is also, of course, the case that we want to make sure that students really are registered in their courses. And I think it is extraordinarily important for us to realize that when I say registered in their courses, that we mean for them to be enrolled in at least 15 hours if it is at all possible. So I want to show you here the data from state universities, and we have similar data from each of the sectors. Again, what I want to show you here is we've disaggregated graduation rates by ACT score, by their incoming preparation. Of course, it's the case that more or better prepared students are more likely to graduate from the college that they go to. What I think is extraordinarily surprising is that when we further disaggregate that by the numbers of hours that those students take in their freshman semester at college, the blue students then, part-time students, taking up to 6 hours. The green students taking between 7 and 11. The yellow students taking between 12 and 14, and the orange students taking 15 or more. Look how extraordinarily important it is how many hours those students take in that first semester as to whether or not they are likely to graduate from their particular institution. That there's not a preparation level in there where taking a fuller schedule is not advantageous to that student. And you might say, well, you know what, actually, there's more going on here than just preparation. And you'd be right. Of course, it's the case that we know that whether or not the student is first generation or not, or low income or not, or their race or gender have implications when it comes to their graduation rate. But even when we take all of those things into account, and this calculation used a propensity score approach to exactly do that, to compare the graduation rates between statistical twins, what we still see is that taking a fuller schedule is extraordinarily important. That moving from 6 hours, if you have a student who's part-time taking 6, moving them to 7 to 11, or if they have 7 and 11, moving them to at least 12, or moving them from 12 hours to 15. Each of those steps has an extraordinarily powerful impact on their likelihood of success. So when we go about creating the way in which students enroll in their courses, we need to deliberately architect that process in such a way that we enable students to take as full a schedule as they are able. And similarly, when we go about creating the semester courses, when we go about the way in which we timetable the courses, the modality at which we offer them, the capacities of the courses that we offer, and when they are timetabled, all of those things play a part in whether or not and to what degree our students are able to take as full a schedule as they're able. academic and social integration, right? So one of the aspects of our academic mindset is the influence for feeling that you belong on campus. And so, sure enough, the way in which we then think about and arrange the experiences that students have on our campuses right from the very start, the in-classroom and outside classroom experiences, curricular and co-curricular experiences, how extraordinarily important this is. This really, this then begs many questions about, for instance, the integration of academic coursework with residence life and student life. Are there ways in which right from the very start we can help students to find their place on campus? There's plenty of data to show that often students who are more involved on campus are significantly more successful than students who are not so involved. Now, it is the case that there is a long-standing myth that students somehow their first semester should sort of not be involved, not get overextended, not somehow get too much on their plate. And yet it seems as though in general, actually, for many students, the experience is quite the opposite. That actually their first experience on campus is one where it is difficult to make friends, difficult to make connections, difficult to get plugged in, difficult to find their place. And so what we need to do is to recognize that in any way that we're able, there is advantage to helping students to find their connection to the campus that we are part of. So academic and social integration. So this idea of transition. We're talking about the transition from not college to college, this transition of enabling students who are not enrolled in our institutions to become enrolled and active participants in our institution. We use this word student as if somehow there is some canonical understanding of what a student is. Of course, this is complete fiction, that all of our students come from all kinds of different pathways that bring them to us. That we have adult students and military students and students who come from direct from high school, and students who come direct from high school but are homeschool students, and students who have very significant dual enrollment experiences before they come to us. All of those different kinds of experiences and others besides, again, there's no reason for us to be surprised at the fact that our students look very different one from another. And instead, to the degree that we're able, why not be able to differentiate the way in which our student orientation, our new student transition is arranged? Let me, again, harp back just a little bit on the idea of students arriving on campus with significant dual enrollment. Again, as I've gone around talking to people on various campuses, it is a common theme that when students talk about students with many dual enrollment hours, again, they were surprised. They treat this as a phenomenon where this almost catches them unawares. This, again, I think is a significant deficit on our part. It is no longer the case that we have a reason to be surprised when we have students who arrive at our campuses with significant numbers of dual enrollment hours. Instead, it is incumbent on us to be able to find strategies where they're able to use that preparation to open different kinds of doors that they would never otherwise be able to open. Similarly, it is not surprising to us when we have adult students who come back to our campus, and they come back and they have had educational experiences at perhaps several different institutions before they come to us. It is not a surprise. It is instead something that we, if we believe passionately as we do, that we need to create viable educational pathways for our students, we have to find ways in which we can differentiate that transition in such a way that it dovetails with our students' experiences. As we think about this idea of transition, I think it's easy for us to think about that from our perspective, our institutional perspective. And I've already alluded to the fact that I don't think that the right way to think of this is student affairs side of the house, academic affairs side of the house. I want us to really believe that there is just one house. But here I want us to focus more on realizing that there are more people in this game than even the team that there is on a campus. How important it is as we architect this transition for our students from not college to college, to recognize how powerful it is to bring parents and guardians and family members and other parts of a support team that are outside our institution as part of this process. I think sometimes we make too big a deal about the fact that we have students who are, we sometimes disparagingly call them helicopter parents. Instead, there is actually something extraordinarily welcome, I believe, in having parents who are committed and interested and a powerful part of the team of enabling our students to be successful. The question is, how do we build a support team that actually is part of a positive experience for students? I don't pretend to not be unaware of the fact that sometimes helicopter parents, sure enough, can do things that aren't always positive as part of the student's experience. But this idea of building a support team is really calling upon us to have a deliberate strategy to engage aspects of the student life, family, parents, other parts of the student's life in support of enabling them to be more successful. It also talks about perhaps ways in which the community around the campus can also be part of that support team. I remember years ago talking to a president in California who literally semester to semester suddenly lost about half of the low-income students that they had at their institution. And they were utterly puzzled where it was that they went. And they looked around and after about a week of digging about, discovered that the bus schedule had changed in their town, and that where a significant number of their students once upon a time were able to take a direct bus to campus, now because they changed the bus routes, now those same students, now they had to take 3 buses to get to campus, and suddenly it all became clear that the students that they once were getting from that segment of the town, they no longer got, just simply because of the changes in bus route. So buses apparently can be part of the support team, as can all kinds of other aspects of the community in which we live. The last aspect I want to talk about is to recognize how extraordinarily important it is that when we design this transition, that we design it for real humans, not for fictitious humans. And by this I mean that the reality is that as humans, it is just a fact that humans make mistakes. And so as we design this transition experience, as we design this set of tasks and this pathway that students follow to become students at our institution, we need to do it recognizing that there are ways in which we could arrange that set of tasks, that journey of decisions, in such a way that when the student makes small mistakes along the way, each of those small mistakes don't lead to complete disaster and them not being a student. But I'm afraid that it is often the case in the past that we've not done that instead the ways in which we've designed the processes have been in such a way that if people do it instead perfectly, then they're able to be students. But if they make a mistake, then either we don't realize the mistake has been made until it's too late, or actually the mistakes are not as easily undone as they might be. The analogy for me is around the design of cockpits. So somebody told me recently that, and I find this very comforting when I get on a plane, that there is a time about 20 or 30 years ago when it was the understanding was that pilots who crashed were just bad pilots. And I'm not pretending actually that pilots who crash necessarily are good pilots, but what the insight that they did have was that instead what they needed to do was to design cockpits in such a way that when humans make mistakes, they don't result in tragedies. And so the design of modern aircraft cockpits are designed in such a way that small human errors do not compound themselves to end in a disastrous crash. Instead, small human-based errors result in some kind of warning or self-correction, which mean that they are simply part and parcel of what happens. We have the opportunity to do this. We have the opportunity to create processes that enable students to make that transition from not college to college, taking into account the fact that more than likely along the way, somebody will make a mistake. Perhaps it will be them, perhaps it will be us, but someone will make a mistake. And so we should design the processes recognizing that mistakes will be made. So, that's the idea. The idea then is to take the aspects of the momentum year and to think then, if this is our purpose, if this is our new paradigm for work, how does that new paradigm influence the way in which we do the most crucial and fundamental things that we do on campus? Today, we've been talking about this transition from not college to college. Certainly, at other times, we will talk about other things, but I very much thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you at the Momentum Summit. Thank you.